Hello, and welcome to your second session in the 6 week program, Stop Overeating. Today, we're going to be taking a little bit of a different approach because I have a lot of content to share with you. And it's really important to me that you understand the basic foundation of why we're going to be doing what we're doing. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you so you can see my slides as we walk through them so you can read it and also hear me kind of talk about it as we move forward. So let's go ahead and share my screen and get started. Okay, as you will see, we are going to be covering a variety of topics today. We're going to talk about overeating. Why do we overeat? And the fact that one size does not fit everyone when it comes to weight loss. And why is that? Next, we're going to move on to over hunger and over desire. What do those terms mean? What can we do about them, and how can we better understand them to start losing weight? We're going to spend some time discussing hormones and the role that hormones play in your weight loss journey. And lastly, we're going to talk about how to create a protocol, which is something we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about as we move forward these next couple weeks. Overeating. Why do we overeat? First and foremost, overeating is characterized by simply consuming more food than we need in order to fuel our bodies. The result of that is that we simply maintain the weight that we're at, or we're eating so much excess that it becomes stored as fat and we just gain more weight. Little disclaimer here, we are not going to be counting calories in this 6 week program. Weight loss is so much more than calories in and calories out. If you want to learn more about the foundation and scientific research of what I'm going to be teaching you, I strongly recommend that you check out the book, Why We Get Fat by Gary Taubes. It's going to go through all of the research that I'm using as a basis for this program. And it's going to help you understand why simply calorie counting and low fat diets are never going to get you where you need to be in your weight loss journey. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but for now, just know that low fat diets and the low fat trend has significantly contributed to the obesity epidemic in our country. And we're going to talk more about that when we get into understanding our hormones. As I mentioned, when it comes to weight loss, one size does not fit all. So, the most important part of this program is that you take ownership of your role in this program. I am not a nutritionist. I'm not going to tell you how much to eat. I'm not going to tell you exactly what to eat. This is a journey of exploration for you. I'm going to give you the tools, and then you have to figure out what works best for you. How much we eat is obviously going to be important, but because everybody's hormones are so different, the impact of how much you eat and how much you work out could have a dramatically different result depending upon you and your own hormone makeup and your own unique body. And so we're going to talk about best practices, but when it comes down to it, it's going to have to be something you're going to explore on your own. So we're going to experiment with different foods and how those foods impact your hormones, because you're going to get much better at sensing those hormones and understanding your body and really being able to discern, am I really hungry, or am I experiencing some type of a sugar withdrawal? Part of that is also going to be just discovering your patterns. What's the prime time for you to plow through that gallon of ice cream, and why do you do it? What's happening physically and emotionally? Once we understand those patterns, we can start dismantling them, okay? So our awareness is going to evolve over the course of these next 6 weeks. So one of the most important tools you're going to need to develop, at least right out of the gate, is record keeping, keeping an eye on yourself and becoming a really close observer. How are you feeling? What are you thinking when you eat? What times of day do you typically eat? How does your body weight fluctuate during the day? How do you feel after you eat certain kinds of foods? And really becoming an investigator of your body and your experience in your body when it comes to food and your hormones. So we're going to want to develop a mechanism to track what's happening with you. Let's talk a little bit about over hunger. So a lot of times when we overeat, it's because we are over hungry. And what that means is we're just not simply attuned to what type of hunger we are feeling. There's a difference between physical hunger and sort of emotional hunger. And so we're going to get a better understanding of when should I be eating? What kind of hunger should I be feeling before I go eat something? How hungry do I need to be before I eat? And how hungry should I be when I stop eating? As part of that, we're going to utilize what we call a hunger scale and use that to assist us in figuring out, okay, when do I start eating and when do I stop eating? And specifically, when we talk about a hunger scale, we talk about a scale from 1 to 10 positive and 1 to negative 10 on the negative end of the spectrum. We talk about eating when we are at a -4 and eating until we hit a +4. And that's kind of the range we want to work within. We don't want to be extremely starved at a -10. We don't want to be extremely full at a 10. We want to start getting a sense of where are we actually on the hunger scale? How hungry am I really before I reach for that bag of Doritos? So, as part of this, we're going to discuss in our session how tuned in to your physical hunger do you really think you are? Is it emotional? Is it every time you hit a -1, you reach for something to feel better, to get you back kind of in balance? Or is it you starve yourself to a -10 and then you make yourself a big fat 10 over and over and over, right? Like we withhold and we resist and then we kind of fall apart. So, getting a sense of where we are physically hungry and becoming more attuned to that. So, just start asking yourself, like, how well do I know when I am hungry? Do you think this is an area where you should be more aware of your body and how you feel? Do you believe you're usually physically hungry when you eat? These are all questions to start asking yourself, questions that we're going to explore in our sessions. So, the most important piece of what I'm going to teach you is the role that your hormones play in over desire and over hunger. There are a lot of hormones in our bodies, and I do not have the scientific background to walk you through all of them. However, what I am going to do is focus on three critical hormones that I understand that do make a huge contribution to your overeating and to your weight loss. Those hormones are insulin, leptin, and ghrelin. And again, as I mentioned, Gary Taub's book is really going to give you the science behind these even more than I can or am willing to do. So let's first start with insulin. Insulin is really the key here because when we have too much insulin in our body, that's the primary reason why we are obese. Insulin is designed to be a fat storage hormone. So what it does is it takes glucose, sugar, from our blood and it stores it for later. Insulin was intended to help us weather the storm, right? Feast or famine. It was intended to help us weather the famine piece of our existence. It's not so necessary anymore when we have so much food, more food than we could possibly consume at our disposal at all times. But the problem is because of that, we always have insulin in our body systems. And so our body is constantly storing that glucose as fat. So when that insulin is created by our pancreas, it's intended to keep our blood sugar levels down. So it sweeps that sugar out of our system and it stores it in our muscles as fat. So that's helpful if we later access those stores of fat for energy. But therein lies the problem. We'll talk more about that. So when our body produces insulin and we store that sugar as fat in our muscles, the theory is that eventually we'll go back to our muscles and our body and we'll take that fat and we'll use it for energy. But when we eat too much or we eat too regularly or we eat foods that cause a huge spike in our insulin, we just always have insulin in our bodies. So our bodies are always storing fat and never using the fat. And so we just retain it and we become obese. So, one of the things that we're going to work through is okay, how do I get my insulin level to go down so that my body has to go to my muscles and other parts of my body, take that fat and use that for fuel? Because I don't want to keep storing that sugar and glucose and fat in my body. I want to actually use the stores that my body is saving for energy. I don't want to keep accumulating more. So how do we do this? We stop eating foods that cause a huge spike in our insulin. So that's going to be primarily carbohydrates and sugars. Another way to reduce the insulin in your body is to eat less frequently. Now, again, the whole point of this is to allow the insulin levels to go down so that our body is triggered. Okay, now I need to find food within myself. I'm going to access those fat stores and I'm going to use them for fuel. When we eat too much food with carbohydrate rich foods and sugars, our body just keeps producing insulin and it keeps storing. So we have to eliminate those foods so our body has no need to produce insulin. And our body can then access our fat stores, which in turn is going to help us to reduce our weight. Similarly, eating frequently is going to cause a spike in your insulin levels, right? Your body's going to create that insulin, it's going to store more glucose. So if we spread out the time period between our meals, it allows our body to sort of rebalance, right? It's not constantly processing something, it kind of has a lull, in which case it's going to start accessing those storages in order to carry you through that time period where you're not putting more food in. Leptin is the second hormone that's really important in this process. So leptin is the hormone that lets you know when you're full. Okay. The problem with having too much insulin in your blood because you're eating too much, you're eating too regularly, or you're eating foods that cause a spike in insulin is that when you have a lot of that insulin in your blood, it blocks the leptin. And so you don't know that you're full. So we need to balance this hormone. We need to reconnect with our leptin by reducing our insulin so that we can allow our leptin to tell us, okay, I'm full now. I don't need to continue to eat. Now I can access those fat stores. But as long as there's insulin in your body, you're never going to feel full. It's crazy. Ghrelin is the third hormone that is really important to understand as part of this process. Ghrelin is the hormone that tells us when we're hungry. When we put high carbohydrate foods and high sugar foods into our bodies, insulin skyrockets. And oddly enough, insulin and ghrelin negatively interact with each other. So when our insulin goes up, ghrelin doesn't recognize that we just put all of this food in our bodies. So we're still feeling like we're hungry. And now we have leptin also being suppressed. So we never know when we're full. We're always feeling hungry. We never know when we're full. And the insulin is high. So everything we're putting in ourselves just keeps getting stored as fat. It is the perfect disaster for becoming overweight. It is a huge source of the obesity epidemic in this country. So, as we work through our discussion in the session, we're going to be talking a little bit about your hormonal state. Like, do you feel hungry all of the time? Do you feel like you're never full? Does your body tell you when it's full, or do you constantly eat without knowing? So, when you leave the session, I hope that you'll kind of sift through some of these questions and really start tuning into your hunger levels and start thinking through, how do I think my hormones are performing? Do I have a good sense when I'm hungry? Do I have a good sense when I'm full? Or does it not make any sense? Did I just eat a whole bunch of food, but yet I still feel hungry and I don't feel full? I don't understand what's going on. That's a pretty good sign that your hormones are just completely out of whack. Another thing just to be mindful of is whether or not you feel tired all day long, right? That can be really a significant sign that you're having some type of hormonal imbalance in your body. So, what can we do? Most people's hormones can simply be regulated by changing their eating habits. When we eat less sugar or no flour, our insulin levels are going to drop, and that's going to have a positive impact on our leptin and our ghrelin. Additionally, if we eliminate snacking and have more time between our meals, there's going to be less insulin in the blood because there's not always something to process and something for the insulin to do. This is going to allow the body to become a lot more sensitive to these hormones because they're going to have some time to rebalance and reset in between meals. Okay, moving on, we're going to talk about over desire. Not only are we going to focus on what you eat and your hormones over these next couple weeks, but we're also going to be talking about the mental aspect. We have to treat the cause and not the symptom, right? We have to figure out, why am I overeating? And that is due to over desire. If we just reduce or resist the overeating, we're never going to get to the root of the problem. And that's the over desire. That's the mental aspect of this. That's the thought problem aspect of overeating and being overweight. When we try to cut back on food to lose weight without addressing this issue, we never solve the problem, which is why so many people will lose weight dramatically through a diet or exercise, but if they never fix their minds, their thoughts about their body, or the patterns that cause them to overeat, they're never going to make it a permanent change. And that's what we're really focusing on here in this program. So, what is desire? When we eat food, our body creates dopamine. And the reason our bodies were programmed to operate that way was to get us out of the cave to go find some food, right? If we didn't have this pleasure hormone released when we ate, there's a good possibility we would lay on the couch watching Netflix all day long and would never have some reason to go eat. But we have that desire to go eat because we want that dopamine rush, right? That's how our bodies are programmed in order to survive. The problem is that our science has created food that cause a crazy amount of a dopamine release. So we're not just getting dopamine release that our bodies were designed for, we're getting like a hyper dopamine release from highly concentrated foods that are high in carbohydrates or sugar. And so we have this unnatural release of dopamine. It's kind of like a drug. Like, we have made food a drug for the hormones in our brain. This creates a crazy over desire and a sense of urgency when we are going to eat, or when we're anticipating that chocolate cake. It makes those foods more important than they actually are. Add to this the thoughts that go along this with this process. I want that. I deserve that. That sounds really good. It's been a long day. I've been so good, right? We reward that desire and those thoughts. So not only do we have this huge dopamine rush when we eat the chocolate cake, but we have these thoughts that we're also rewarding. I want that. I'm going to eat it. That's a reward. I get this dopamine hit that's crazy and intense. So now our brains think that those foods are essential for survival because they give us such a bigger hit than something simpler, right? Than a glass of milk. They believe those foods are more important for our survival than the glass of milk, than the carrot, or whatever it may be. So, as you know, part of our brain's function is to take repeated processes and relegate them to the background. Our brain is trying to be efficient. So once we've run the process a couple times of desiring the chocolate cake, rewarding our thoughts of giving ourselves a chocolate cake, but then rewarding our brain with the dopamine hit, we have run that pattern so many times, our brain just puts it in the background and it just keeps running. Our brain thinks it's very important, and it just becomes this very automatic pattern of, I want that, I get it, I reward it, I feel better, moving on, right? It becomes very unconscious. And so we're going to reconnect with the conscious element of ourselves and pull that pattern forward so that we can take a look at it. One of the things that we're going to look at is, what are the feelings that we're experiencing when we overeat? Because oftentimes those feelings are part of the pattern. They're part of the downward spiral that creates this, I want that, I need that, I want that to feel better, I want to veg on the couch with my ice cream. What are the feelings that we're having that are associated with those thoughts? Because oftentimes what we're doing is eating to numb those negative emotions. When you're feeling shame or disappointment, if you know, I'm going to go eat a piece of chocolate cake and have this huge dopamine rush, you are going to feel better for a minute. Absolutely. You reward the thought, you buffer the negative emotion. It's a very superficial solution to a temporary problem. because we're not taught how to handle those negative feelings. Now, those of you that have coached with me in the past, you know that that's a primary thing that we focus on, is managing those emotions. How do we process them, and how they're so essential to living a balanced life. But we're going to look at those emotions, and we're going to figure out a different way to address them and process them without food. The reason we're going to take this approach, as opposed to simply white knuckling it and saying, well, we're just going to cut out the sugar and the flour and we're going on a diet and that's all there is to it, is because willpower and white knuckling it doesn't work. If it did, every diet ever created would have been successful. But it's not. Your willpower is finite. It's like that beach ball that you're holding underwater. I'm going to be good. I'm going to be good. I'm not going to eat the chocolate cake. And then you finally, it just blows because you can't live your life that way in tension with yourself like that. Not only that, but when you have that resistance and you're pushing it down, you're trying to white knuckle it, it creates this crazy pattern because eventually you're going to blow and you're going to eat the food and you're going to have the dopamine hit. And then you're going to feel bad and you're going to beat yourself up and you're going to resist again. And then it's going to blow up in your face and you're going to eat the thing again. And it just becomes this crazy cycle because you're relying on a finite resource of willpower to stop overeating. It's never going to work. We have to look at the hormonal issues as to why we overeat. We have to look at the emotional issues as to why we overeat. From there, we can make lasting change. But when we're constantly resisting and white knuckling it and being hard on ourselves, we're never going to be successful. So we're going to scrap that completely and take a different tact. Again, as I said, resisting the urge, it just makes it more intense. And I'm sure many of you have experienced that. When you tell yourself, I'm not going to eat the chocolate cake, you can just feel the tension, right? You're wringing your hands, you're looking at it, you're thinking about it, you're beating yourself up for thinking about it. And it creates this intensity with which we approach food, right? And then we almost feel crazy when we do overeat, right? It's like we're overeating and we can't help ourselves. We're eating when we don't even want to. It's because we're resisting and it's impossible. That beach ball comes up, it blows up in your face. So you're not crazy, you're not alone. That is the cycle of trying to white knuckle it and resist it and use willpower to stop overeating. This is exactly how your brain was supposed to operate. Nothing is wrong with you. The most important thing to recognize here is that the reason we have desire is because of a thought. Once we address the hormonal piece of it, there's a lot of thoughts about food. I want that. That'll make me happy. It'll feel better. It'll be so much more relaxing, whatever it may be. That's driving some of the over desire, certainly, in addition to the chemicals in your brain. The beauty of this is that not only can you create that thought, but you can uncreate that thought. And that's something that we're going to work through. The goal is to reduce the desire and take the control back. If we could paint a perfect outcome for you as you go through this program, it would be to no longer desire food to dull emotions, to have a better connection to your hormones. And so once the desire is gone, it's a lot easier not to overeat. And so we have to focus on eliminating that desire. What is causing it? Is it hormones? Is it emotions? Is it my thoughts? And sort that out. So what do? We reduce hunger to our natural state. So we get back to a connection with our body, and we do this by eliminating flour and sugar, at least in the short term. So what I will ask is, at least for the first couple weeks, you do your best to cut out flour and cut out sugar. And this means any type of highly concentrated flour. I don't care if it's rice flour or wheat flour, any type of flour. Try and eliminate it so that you can reconnect with your hormones and allow your body to reset. Then we're going to plan your meals for fuel, right? Food is for fuel, not for feelings. Okay. We're going to kind of use that as our mantra, because that's going to force all of those thoughts to come up, right? I want that. I deserve that. It sounds really good. I've had a long day. This will make Saturday night so much more enjoyable. All of those thoughts we're going to coach through. And part of forcing yourself to eat just for fuel is because it opens the door for those thoughts to come in and for your beliefs about food to enter. The net result of eliminating flour and sugar, at least initially, is going to reduce that overhunger and over desire because we're taking away that crazy rush that makes you eat in kind of a manic way. We're getting the insulin levels back down and we're forcing your body to access its own fat stores for fuel. But you can't do that without eliminating insulin. And that's why we have to cut the carbs and the sugar, at least initially. Okay. This takes time. We call it fat adaptation. That's when your body accesses your fat for fuel. It could take every person a different amount of time. You will know that you're there when you can go a tremendous amount of time without eating. The other day, I realized by 6 p.m. at night, I hadn't eaten anything the entire day, and I was shocked. But the fact of the matter is, I just wasn't hungry. That's because I am fat adapted. My body doesn't get hungry in the way that it used to because it doesn't have this humongous wave of like huge dopamine hits and insulin jolts that mess up my hormones. You will know when you're fat adapted, when you can go a significant period of time, 12 to 16 hours, without feeling hungry and without needing food. That's when you will know that your body has rebalanced, and it's an amazing experience. One of the essential pieces that we're going to work through is setting up a food protocol. We're going to plan our food in advance using our prefrontal cortex to make good decisions for ourselves. We're not going to allow our primitive brain to make food decisions in the moment because that's never going to pan out well. Okay. So your protocol is going to include what you'll eat, which meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, just breakfast and dinner, whatever it may be, but we're going to decide in advance what meals you're going to eat. What time are you going to eat those meals? How much time is going to lapse between each meal? And how much food are you going to eat at each meal? The protocol is going to be very specific, but it also has to be very sustainable. Again, this is not a temporary diet. This is a way to change your relationship with food permanently. And so the goal here is not to say, okay, I'm going to decide for my prefrontal cortex, I'm just going to eat vegetables and tea every day, all day. No one wants to live like that. That is not the purpose here. And so we want to approach our protocol from a place of honesty and integrity and what's the best choice for me. If that means I'm going to eat McDonald's on Thursday because that's what I want to do, then that's what I'm going to do, and that's okay, right? We can have a day, we can have a moment where we have a joy eat, and we will talk about those. But the goal is to be sustainable, okay? We're not trying to make you into a weird food person who brings their own turkey and chicken with them when they go out to a restaurant. That is not the goal. The goal is to start being more conscious and giving more forethought to what we're putting in our bodies. These are general guidelines. As I said, I'm not a nutritionist. Your body is going to operate differently than mine. We generally recommend you eat a lot of vegetables, healthy fats to make you feel full. We're going to limit our proteins and our grains because those also cause a spike in insulin, right? I say limit, we're not going to eliminate them, but just being more conscious of how much you're putting into your body. And make sure that you go into your protocol with the belief of it's important, right? The reason we have a protocol is to make good decisions for ourselves in advance and to be more efficient, right? We make so many decisions on any given day. You have this decision fatigue. What am I going to have for dinner? What am I going to have for lunch? I didn't plan anything, right? We're eliminating that. We're making decisions ahead of time and we're sticking with them. We're freeing up all that mental space that you used to waste trying to figure out, what am I going to eat today? What are we going to cook for dinner? No, we are planning it in advance and we're making room for new things. During our session, we're going to work through all of this. But as you go through your week following our session, I just encourage you to think through, how are you thinking about this? How is your brain receiving this information? What are your concerns? What are your current eating habits? What's going to have to change? What's working and what's not working? Okay. So just be very aware and very conscious of how This is going to impact your life and the thoughts that come up as you start making those changes or considering those changes. There's going to be a lot of worksheets that you're going to get from your session. The most important takeaway for this week is we're going to start creating a protocol and a food journal. We're going to look at what are we actually putting in our bodies, because one of the problems is we've just gotten so unconscious about what we put in our body. And when you look at it down on paper, it's amazing to see how much stuff we put in our bodies. And so just being honest with yourself and really taking a hard look at it is the first step. So creating a protocol, journaling about your food. I will give you some worksheets that will list different types of foods and the different categories that we recommend eating a lot of, and a really great worksheet on working through giving up flour and sugar. I know it's going to be hard. You will be amazed at the impact it will have on your body. You'll be able to see those hormones kind of freak out, and then it passes and you start to become fat adapted. So I'm really excited for you to take this journey. I promise if you put in the work, it will be worth it. Okay, I will see you at your next session. Can't wait.